Hello and welcome back to some more early morning barking, talking about BPD and NPD by somebody that has both. This is the podcast version that goes along with the YouTube version, which you can find at youtube.com/earlymorningbarking, or is it /channel/ just go to YouTube and search early morning barking, you'll be fine. Unless you're watching this on that channel, then you're a step ahead of me. Well done. You win this round. I'll get you next time. So here today we're going to talk about NPD and Fantasies of Power, which is one of my more favourite ones, I'll be honest. This is definitely one where I can relate. This is one where I lived a lot. See, when you think of narcissists, you think of controlling people, you think of the relationship abuse, behaviour, all of that sort of thing. You don't tend to think so much of the fantasies of power. But we have numerous examples throughout history and around the world of narcissistic people deciding that they should be in charge. And it's fair to say that some of us throughout history have had some fairly sick and twisted ideas about what should happen when they're in charge, and the rest of the world vehemently disagreed with them about them being in charge. Yeah, so it's not about hatred or prejudices. It's about a feeling of superiority. It's about a feeling of, oh, come here, let me do it. It's this feeling that everything would just be much better if I were in charge of it. And if not that, then I should be somebody with a lot of power. And I would like to have a lot of power. And that was where everything in my life revolved around. That was the plan, right? I didn't just want to do well. I didn't just want to make a lot of money. I wanted power. And I was looking around the world at people who had power. And, I landed on media. Because, well, you want to talk about power, you want to talk about world influence and that kind of thing, then definitely media, right? I mean, that's the way forward. Look at Rupert Murdoch. We talk about how the newspapers get to pick the next prime minister and that kind of thing. Well, I would like to run that. That was my thinking. And so I set out to do that. I obviously got nowhere, I obviously didn't do very well at all because, here we are, not in charge of the world, not picking prime ministers, doing a little YouTube channel and a podcast which has double-figure downloads. So, little bit off running the world, but, that was very much the plan. Build a media empire, run the world. Seriously. And I tell that to people and they're like, you're ridiculous. Don't be silly. Like, seriously. That was the plan. That was actually seriously the plan. Now, did I go about doing it the right way? Absolutely not. And ultimately, I don't want to run the world. It's a bit of a nightmare. Who can be bothered with that sort of thing, ultimately? And I'd like to think I'm a nice person, so I wouldn't want to hurt anybody to do it. And invariably, people who try to run the world end up hurting somebody, and I don't really want to do that ever. So, that was ultimately a barrier that stood in my way. But this fantasies of power, okay, taking over the world is an extreme example. But this can happen in lots of little microcosm contexts around the world in your life, right? Yeah, I had the thing about taking over the world, but somebody might have big designs on running your office, right? Somebody might really, really wish they could fire you or fire a number of people around your office. Some people might already have that power and enjoy flexing it just because they can. Which is horrific, but, here we are. So power comes in lots of different forms, lots of different shapes and sizes. It doesn't have to be run the world. It could be somebody just very controlling. It could be somebody who wants to take over something. Fantasies of power. That's a very vague thing when you actually think about it. That can come out in so many different ways. And I'll be honest, it's one that I enjoy playing with. Right? It's a fun one. It depends how seriously you take it. And I've learned to laugh at it more than anything, because I can see the absurdity of it in my own case. Because I don't want to run the office. I don't want to run the company. I want to take over the world or run the world, whatever. And that's ludicrous. That's insane. It's never, ever, ever, ever going to happen. The only way it could happen is if the only person left alive is me, and then I'm in charge of the world. And so I can laugh at that. I'm not ever going to conceivably do anything about that. But what if I just wanted to be promoted at work? What if I wanted something that wasn't so ludicrous but came with fantasies of power? Then you could see perhaps there might be a road to doing something about it. There might be a path to beginning this fantasy of power. There's nowhere for me to start with taking over the world. You can't do that. It's impossible. So, where does someone start if all they want to do is become your boss? Well, then you can start seeing the potential for some really hideous behavior coming out, can't you? Some really ruthless, cutthroat, I will succeed at any cost. And when you mix this in with other NPD traits of, feelings of superiority, feeling that everyone else is scum, feeling, that whatever you have to do to people to do what you want to do is justified because you can do it. So therefore you are reasonable in doing it. That's always the argument with the narcissistic traits. I can do it to you, therefore it's my place to do it to you. If you were better and could stop me doing this to you, then that would change the order of things, but you're not, so I can. That's what we think about things. And so if we're trying to do something with this fantasy of power, then of course we can end up treating people horrifically. And you build this up on a bigger scale, and eventually you get to well-known dictators and horrific people throughout history, right? It's not too many steps between. You can see the path. And this, these fantasies of power can, there are some people who are doing quite well with it. There are some people who are doing far too well with it. All of your internet influencers, all of your people like that who get off on having influence, this is part of it. And I'm not saying that everyone who has this sort of thinking has NPD. Of course, this is one trait. They might only have this one thing, but that's kind of unlikely, to have a fantasy of power and then to not have any other related narcissistic traits would seem an unlikely situation to be in. But you can see how this starts treating people badly. Now, from the point of view of the narcissist, there's a lot to get over here. I mean, why are they having fantasies of power? What's wrong with, that's something that can quite clearly come from a childhood thing, from a traumatic experience where a control was taken away from you. And now I want ultimate control. I'm going back the other way with it. That's perhaps where things went for me. From growing up with a feeling of a lack of control over my life, over the world, over decisions made for me. And then when you reach that early adulthood from late adolescence and you start to rebel against your childhood, you start to sort of take back that control, and it can start to come at any cost. Like I'm defending myself, right? I'm standing up for myself in a way. I'm taking control. I'm taking what I deserve. It's mine. And so if you stand in the way, then screw you. You're in my way. That's our mindset. And this comes from realizing, we need to deal with it by realizing why we're doing it. And then by realizing that our behavior, our whatever we feel the need to do being, justifiable, is inappropriate, is not okay. That we need to, we can cut off empathy for people so we don't have to feel bad about them. We don't have to take their feelings into account. And yes, we do. Yes, we do have to take people's feelings into account. And so we can't do anything about it until we start to get that empathy. And from the point of view of everyone around us, this is just hideous to put up with. It's hideous to go through. Who wants to deal with that? Who wants to be treated like that? Actually, some people, but not many people, not in a day-to-day office setting. We're back into other fantasies now. This is, I've talked about cluster B and kink and other private pursuits of that nature. And, this is a common way for this sort of behavior to come out safely. To have that fantasy of power and control, and to be in a situation where it's okay if you exert that within reasonable pre-discussed boundaries, safely done, and etc., etc. It's part of that link between mental health problems and kink and BDSM, to be perfectly honest with you. You have people who do have this power, this wish for power, and want it to come out and play with it and have fun with it. And as long as they can confine it to a particular context or area of life, it tends to be okay. That's a way of dealing with it, a way of living with it going forward, but it's not what I'm necessarily getting into and suggesting as a method of therapy at all. But of course, it's just an example of what some people do. I think I'm going to leave that one here today. NPD and fantasies of power. I don't have them anymore. Because, like I say, I'm aware of how ludicrous they are. But for those of you who do, this is what drives you. This is seen as ambition, and it's okay to a certain extent. Ambition is good, drive is good, but not at the expense of the well-being of others. Not at the cost of being a dick. And to those of you putting up with it, I'm sorry. Stand back. Stand out of the way. Run to the side. And don't let us roll over you. Don't let us take that control. But also, don't put up with too much. So I hope that's helpful. You be sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons. I don't know what I'm talking about. This is a podcast, not YouTube. Go on over to YouTube. Visit that. Follow me on Twitter at Barking, at Instagram at Early Morning Barking, TikTok's Early Morning Barking, and of course patreon.com/Early Morning Barking. I'll be back soon with another podcast and that. If you want to catch up with more, again, youtube.com/Early Morning Barking. I'll see you later. You take care. Bye-bye.